Hello, Zuko here. Maybe I'm very close to the camera. I don't know. You want to see how many books I've read this month? Disclosure, it is only Wednesday, the 27th right now. But I don't feel like having even more books pile up. So you're gonna have to take this for what it is. But here's my end of the May book wrap up. Are you ready? Okay. Here's half of them. Here's half of them. I don't know what to do with these anymore. Oh god. There's more, okay? There's 20 books here. I'm just gonna go through them in the order that I read them. So, the first book that I read this month was Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I think a lot of people are reading this right now because it's plague literature. This follows I'm so sorry if you can hear my cat playing. She's decided right now is the time to do that. She was silent for the last couple hours. It's 1 a.m. I don't want to deal with the cat right now, but this is what we're doing. So, this follows a troupe of actors and musicians during a pandemic, which in the book is a mutation of the H1N1 virus, which I believe is another coronavirus, so that's super fun. But because I've only ever heard good things about this book, I really, really wanted to love it. And it wasn't my favorite. I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was expecting more dystopian vibes than I got in this book, so I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. It was fine, but it's not a favorite, you know? Now, like a lot of people, I also ended up reading or rereading the Hunger Games trilogy this month in preparation for the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So I read the Hunger Games. You all know what this is about. My previous rating was 4 out of 5 stars, and I kept it a 4 out of 5 star read. I think this was a really solid book, and I really enjoyed rereading it. Then, of course, there's Catching Fire, which I originally rated 3 out of 5 stars, and I ended up bumping this up to a 4 out of 5 star read. I remember not enjoying this book as much, but I thought this was just as good as the first book, and I don't know why I didn't like it as much the first time I read it. Maybe it's because I was young and I didn't fully get it. But I really enjoyed rereading this. And of course, I read Mockingjay, which I originally rated 2 out of 5 stars because I was oh, this book was so slow, nothing happened, and then everything happened and it was so rushed, and it didn't make any sense at the end, and I still don't like the epilogue. But I ended up bumping this up to a 4 out of 5 stars too, so this whole series was a solid 4 out of 5 star read. I didn't find any of the problems with this book that I had the first time I read them, rereading it now. I don't know what happened, but I really enjoyed the reread of this way more than I enjoyed reading it the first time. The next book that I read is Sadie by Courtney Summers. Now, I listened to the audiobook for this because I've heard the audiobook was great, and I think everyone who said it was great was totally telling the truth. Was a really good audiobook. So this is about a girl with a stutter whose younger sister is murdered, and she believes she knows who did it, so she goes to hunt the murderer down. This book was amazing. The audiobook was great. I don't know if it's as good physically, as I've heard other people prefer the audiobook to the physical book. Can I help you? But I really enjoyed the reading experience. This was another 4-star read for me. Next, I read All the Crooked Saints by Maggie Stiefvater. This book, I feel like, is the forgotten Stiefvater book. I don't think anyone talks about it, and I know that other people have mentioned that it is her writing about a culture that isn't hers, because I believe this is a Hispanic community, but I have never read a Stiefvater book, and this was the first one I decided to pick up. This is a magical realism book all about miracles. It sounded like a fun adventure. It's not what it was. It's about a radio station and miracles, but I thought that this was a pretty solid book, but there was a lot of romance involved, and romance is my favorite, so I only gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl. Now, I bought this from Book Outlet before I read it, but I ended up reading it when I was waiting for it to ship. I even got this fancy signed cover, which I didn't know it was signed when I bought it. I did not like this book. This book is not staying with me. Never gonna read the physical copy. I hope that whoever finds this book adores it and is so excited they found a signed copy of this book. So this is a book about a boy, his friend named Earl. They make movies together, and the main character, I don't even remember his name, becomes friends with a girl who is dying of cancer because his mom guilt trips him into it. You don't know anything really about the girl, Rachel, who is dying of cancer. She's just a plot device to make the main character grow as a person. I do not love the idea of using a dying girl and cancer as a plot device to help your shitty, unlikable male character grow as a person. That's not what women or what cancer is for. I think I gave this 2 out of 5 stars because I didn't despise it, but I didn't like it. This was not a good book. Also, it's by Jesse Andrews. I didn't say that before. And I read The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This is The Wizard of Oz. It's the story of The Wizard of Oz. It is the original story that the movie is based off of. This book includes a pair of silver slippers. They were made ruby in the movie because they had just gotten Technicolor and like color films, so they wanted to make the shoes stand out instead of being gray. But they were silver in the books. This book is so fun. It's such a good, like, just childhood nostalgia book. It's a short read, like, it's tiny. It's so fun. I don't know. I just find these books really fun because they're so easy. I rated this book a solid 4 stars, and I would recommend this if you haven't read it yet. Please read this book. I suppose in that vein, I should also mention, this is The Wizard of Oz Complete Collection Volume 1. This is the first 3 books in the 15-book Wizard of Oz series. It is all of the books written by L. Frank Baum. So I've read the first book and the second book, which is The Marvelous Land of Oz, and I will be reading Ozma of Oz, which is book 3, sooner or later, but I think I gave the second book also 4 stars. It was also very fun. It was silly. It was a good romp in a nice, like, childhood setting. These are fun. They're a fast read. I really enjoy them. Next, I read The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness. I have heard, like, I feel like everyone I know who has talked about this book or who has read this book is like, it wasn't very good, it's not what I was expecting, I didn't love it. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was super fun. It was like magical realism-y. There's like, I don't know, it's like kind of slice of life-y, but with some magic involved. Characters felt like people. I don't know. This was a good book. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. So the premise of this book is that, like, in every other book, you know, there's the teen protagonists who are like rebel outsiders who don't fit in and they do all these magical cool things. This is about the kids who just aren't part of that group. They're watching all of that happen. They're watching Bella fall in love with Edward and all that weird stuff happen. They're watching the main characters stop the world from ending, right? That's just happening in the background. This is just about the people who just live there. And it was so precious. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Please read it if you haven't. And if you like magical realism and cats, I'll leave you with that. Next, I read Darius the Great Is Not Okay. This is the first book in the Darius series. I think the next novel's coming out soon. It's like a companion novel of him in the future. This is about a mixed-race teenager who is going to Iran for the first time to visit his grandparents, and him trying to discover himself and his identity within his culture and, like, who he is and what he feels and stuff. I don't know how to explain it any more than that, really. But this was, like, just a good contemporary... Can I help you? No? Cool. This was just, like, a really sweet contemporary fiction book that was possibly queer. It's never really mentioned. Yeah. Next, I read 5 Feet Apart by... some people. Rachel Lippincott and Mickey Daughtry and Tobias Laconis or Iconis. This is a sick lit book about cystic fibrosis, and while I think it's cool that it's bringing attention to cystic fibrosis, it skips over, as usual, as in most YA sick lit romances. I don't know why they're always romances. It skips over all the, like, really gross, awful, unpleasant parts of cystic fibrosis. It's wild. This book just kind of promoted unhealthy behavior for the sake of love. I also, every time the main character's name was, like, ever mentioned, I forgot that was her name and I was, like, caught off guard. That's how, like, kind of non-memorable the characters were. It's sad because this cover is so pretty, but this wasn't a good book. It was just about sick kids falling in love and being dumb. Like, they weren't even endearing sick kids like The Fault in Their Stars. They're just dumb. I gave this a 2 out of 5 star. So it was not good. Then I read Dear Evan Hansen, the novel, by Val Emmich with Stephen Levison, Benj Pasek, and Justin Paul, the creators of the hit show. This is obviously based on the musical Dear Evan Hansen, but it's like the novelization of it, and I've never seen the musical. I've never even, like, actually listened to the soundtrack aside from, I think, Waving Through a Window? Is that what it's called? I don't know. That's what I know about. But, like, I honestly enjoyed the book. It was a good book about a kid with, like, no friends being forced to pretend that he's friends with a kid who is dead. It was just, like, a good little book. and I think I might have to keep it for a while. I gave this book a solid like 3 out of 5 stars. Next, I read The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. So this is a Maggie Stiefvater book that I feel like people have actually heard about. This is about like island somewhere around England where every year they do a horse race with these deadly aquatic horses, and it is about characters who are competing in that. I thought that this book was going to be more high stakes and high energy and high action than it was, but it was kind of more a like character driven rather than plot driven book. I've heard that that's not uncommon with Maggie Stiefvater books, which makes me worried about reading the Raven Cycle, because like what if I find it boring? I hope I don't, because those books are pretty. But yeah, this was very horse centered. So if you're a horse girl, read this book if you haven't already. But I did give this book like a solid 4 out of 5 stars. The writing was good, and like I enjoyed the characters. I just wish there was more action, you know? Then I read Lenobia's Vow, a House of Night novella following Lenobia. I think she was like the horse riding instructor of the House of Night school. I don't know. It's been like close to a decade since I read the first 6 House of Night novels. I never finished them, but they had this one as an audiobook at my library, so I took it out and I listened to it because it was really short. These didn't need to exist. I'm just gonna come right out and say it. There was no reason for this book to exist. It wasn't interesting, it wasn't good, it was like boring. I didn't care. And the voices were like, oh meh. Like it was really, I think I gave this 2 out of 5 stars because like it wasn't straight up like offensive, but it wasn't good. Next, I read the book that everyone is reading right now, which is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This is the prequel novel to The Hunger Games, set during the 10th Hunger Games, following President Snow as he mentors a District 12 tribute. And that's really all I can say about it. You'll have to read it for yourself. It's quite a chunky book compared to like the first series, but honestly, I was expecting this to be kind of unnecessary. I really enjoyed reading this book. I thought it was really well done. I thought it was interesting. I thought that the District 12 tribute, Lucy Gray, I thought that she was kind of obnoxious, but I think that's who she was, and like it was intentional. And I don't know, I really liked this book. You guys, read it. There's no spoilers on this book here at all. I gave this a 4 out of 5 star to just round up the whole Hunger Games series because it was good, and I was really glad that it exists. Next, I read The Supernaturalist by Owen Colfer. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name. I think it might be. It might not be. This is a standalone sci-fi book about people who are fighting these energy monsters that only some people who have experienced traumatic events can see. The main character is an orphan who has escaped his like horrible oppressive orphanage to join this group of people who are fighting these things. Now, there's nothing wrong with this book, but it wasn't for me in a way that like I understood how other people could like it, but I couldn't focus on it. I don't know what it was. So I chose not to rate this book because I didn't want to give it a low rating just because it wasn't for me. There was nothing I found that was bad or boring about it. It just wasn't for me. So I didn't rate it. But pick it up if you like YA or like middle grade, probably middle grade. If you like middle grade sci-fi, you might really enjoy this. This was like action packed and interesting. It just wasn't for me. Then we're gonna go into the book that like I actually thought was bad, which was The Asylum by Madeline Rue. This is a YA horror, I think there are 4 books and a set of novellas, following a like summer college prep course that takes place in a former asylum for like mentally ill people. This book was bad. It wasn't written well. Like nothing about it was like intriguing or kept you reading. The main character like met a girl and immediately was like really possessive of her if guys talked to her at all. And like the third main character, who is obviously also a boy because it's always 2 boys and a girl, right? But the third main character had to be like, no, I'm gay, so it's fine. I'm not a threat to you, for like the main boy to enjoy his existence. Otherwise, that was a threat to this girl he just met and he wanted to date that girl. It was so bad. Like, the writing was just awful. The characters acted like 12 when they were supposed to be like 16 or 17. Blech. This wasn't scary. I fell asleep reading it, or I guess listening to it. I didn't finish it. This is the DNF of the month because it was bad. It was so bad. 1 star. 1 star book. It was bad. Then I read, and maybe by the time this video comes out, I will have read both, but I've read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. This also has Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, which is the sequel to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I haven't read the sequel yet. I have it on audio. I'm going to listen to it soon, so probably by the time this video's out, I will have an opinion on it. I'm worried I'm not going to like it because it's set in a different place, and I like the whole Chocolate Factory concept. I think that was fun. I really enjoyed Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It was like so cute and fun. It was very similar to the like original movie. This was much different and much better than the Tim Burton movie. I'm gonna say it. I like the original movie better. I think everyone does. Although the Tim Burton movie wasn't like terribly far from this, but there was a whole subplot with like Willy Wonka's dad, which just doesn't, that's not a part of this book. It's just not. I think I gave this 3 or 4 out of 5 stars. I don't have my thing open right now because I spent so long trying to think of the name Tim Burton that my iPad shut off. But I really enjoyed this book. If you haven't read it yet, like, and you want to read a kid's book, read this and then read The Wizard of Oz, or read them in a different order. They're both like such classic movies. Read the books and then watch the movies, and then like tell me what you think down below if you've read them. If you like them more or less than the movies. I feel like they're kind of on equal playing field, but like the movies are a bit higher because they have that childhood nostalgia for me. I never read the books as a kid. Let me know what you think. Next, I read The June Boys by Court Stevens. This is a book in a version of the United States where for the last 10 years, 3 boys have gone missing on the 1st of June every year or two, and the next year, on June 30th, they are returned. So it's a kidnapper who gives the boys back unharmed after 13 months of holding them. The year this book takes place, one of the boys turns up dead in a suitcase, and they're trying to figure out if the rest of the boys that have been taken are dead or what's going on, and the main character's cousin has been taken, so that has like her personally tied to this, and her dad is one of the main suspects, so she has to figure out if he was capable of doing something so horrible. This book I enjoyed. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was like kind of obvious, like it was pretty easy to guess what was going on, but I enjoyed reading it, and the cover is so pretty. I think I gave this, what did I give this? I gave this like a solid 3 out of 5 stars. Like it was a good read, and it was a fun read, and this cover's really pretty. Then I read Little Peach by Peggy Kern. This is a very short like novella about a black girl from a poor community who is running away to New York, and she ends up in sex work in a gang. So they don't like call themselves pimps and stuff as they're taking advantage of using these young girls for money, but it's a gang who makes money off of selling girls for sex. So trigger warnings in this book include, but are not limited to, violence, like physical violence, sexual violence, rape, pedophilia, and like drug use, if not more. Those are the main ones I can think of right now. It brings attention to kind of systematic oppression and the way that poor people stay poor, and poor neighborhoods tend to be neighborhoods with people of color in them, and they're just stuck in this like cycle of poverty and doing things that are harmful to them to try to make ends meet and survive. And this was like good for that, but like it wasn't a favorite book. I gave this like 2.5, 3 stars. And the last book that I've read as of the filming of this video is I Am Number 4 by Pittacus Lore. This is a older YA, I don't know, adventure book. I didn't know it was about aliens. This is a very alien book. Like at one point they're talking about someone from their home planet, and they're like, oh yeah, his name was Brandon. You know, that alien name, Brandon. Like, it's one of those books where the aliens are just humans reskinned with superpowers. I don't know, this book was silly. It's like really teen romance heavy. There's like a lot of 15-year-olds making out, and it's like like I had to stop at one point as like the kissing scene started, and like just because I was horrified. I don't want to read about teens kissing. It's just not for me. But this was like a fun book. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I might continue on with the series, but I'm not going to keep the physical copies of the series because, like, if I ever reread, I'm 24. I'm almost gonna, like, I'm gonna be 25 at the end of the year. Do I think I'm gonna reread this book about 15-year-olds ever in the future? No, because, like, what, in 5 years? I'm gonna be 30. At 30, I don't want to read about 15-year-olds kissing. So I'm not gonna keep this series, but it's fun, and I think I'm gonna keep reading it for now. Unless it gets worse, then I won't. But yeah, so that is all 20, 21, 22 books that I read in the month of May. Most of them I listened to on audiobook. Some of them I didn't. I think only 2 of them I didn't. I think the only books that I like physically read were Little Peach and The June Boys. Everything else was audiobook, most of them borrowed from my local public library. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this very large wrap up, and I will see you whenever I do my next video. Less similar to the remake. Who the fuck is that guy? Who's the guy who's obsessed with Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter? He was married to her? Fuck. What's his name? That art style. Fuck. Who? It's not Earl Stein, but that's all I want to say. Jack Skellington. Oh my god. Tim Burton! Oh my god! Tim Burton!